Ball State just named one of the strangest starting quarterbacks in college football. His name is Keldric Luster, and he is officially listed at 5'10", 250 pounds. Not a running back taking wildcat snaps, not a fullback coming in on 3rd and 1. This dude is the actual starting quarterback. He's going to take the first snap, run the offense, throw the football, make reads, and probably be one of the last quarterbacks in the country a defender wants to meet in the open field. And somehow, being built like a linebacker isn't even the craziest part of his story. When you first see 5'10" and 250 pounds next to QB, the obvious reaction is to think this has to be a gimmick. You picture a guy coming onto the field for a couple short yardage runs and heading right back to the sideline. But Luster has been playing quarterback for years. Before college football basically forgot about him, he was one of the most productive quarterbacks in Texas high school football. He could throw, he could run, and he was actually fast. Luster once ran an 11.26 in the 100-meter dash in high school. Obviously, he wasn't 250 pounds then, but that tells you what kind of athlete he started as. This isn't some slow pocket passer who randomly got huge. He started as an explosive dual-threat quarterback and eventually grew into the frame he has now. His high school career is where this story gets ridiculous. At Frisco Liberty in Texas, Luster was already making noise as a sophomore. Even with his season limited by injury, he threw for more than 1,600 yards, ran for more than 500 more, and accounted for more than 20 touchdowns. He was named his district's Offensive Newcomer of the Year, and that was basically the warning for what was coming next. His junior season in 2021 was insane. Luster completed nearly 69% of his passes while throwing for 3,435 yards and 30 touchdowns. That alone would have been a huge season. But then he ran for another 1,579 yards and 23 touchdowns. In 1 year, Luster produced more than 5,000 yards of offense and 53 touchdowns. He wasn't just scrambling when a play broke down. Running the football was a huge part of his game. He averaged almost 9 yards per carry, which meant defenses could cover everybody perfectly and still watch their quarterback problem turn into a 30-yard game. There was one game against Denison that really shows how crazy he could be. Luster threw for 461 yards and 6 touchdowns, then ran for another 206 yards and another score. He finished that night with 677 total yards and 7 touchdowns. One player, one game. And these weren't empty numbers on a bad football team. Frisco Liberty went 10-2 that year with Luster running the offense. Then he transferred before his senior year, and Liberty went 0-10 the next year. You can't blame an entire team's fall on one player leaving, but going from 10 wins to 0 after your quarterback leaves definitely says something. For his senior year, Luster transferred to McKinney High School and stepped up into Texas Class 6A football. The competition got better, the defenses got bigger, and his numbers naturally dropped from that absurd junior season, but he was still really productive. Luster threw for more than 2,200 yards and 24 touchdowns, ran for another 771 yards, and averaged more than 9 yards per carry. More importantly, McKinney started winning. They'd gone 4-6 the year before he arrived. With Luster, they went 8-5 and reached the 3rd round of the playoffs for the first time in almost 30 years. By the time his high school career was over, Luster had more than 7,200 passing yards, nearly 2,900 rushing yards, and over 10,000 yards of total offense. He accounted for 107 touchdowns. So you hear that and probably assume Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, and every major program in the country were fighting over him. They weren't. Luster was only a 3-star prospect and was ranked around the number 100 quarterback in his class. He had offers from schools like Indiana, Navy, and Air Force, but he wasn't treated like one of the top quarterbacks in the country. The biggest issue was pretty obvious. He was short. College football has become more accepting of shorter quarterbacks, but 5'10" is still 5'10". Coaches worry about seeing over 6'5" offensive linemen, finding throwing lanes when the pocket gets crowded, or whether a shorter quarterback's game would translate when everybody on defense is bigger and faster. Luster had all the production in the world, but he didn't have the body type most programs wanted at quarterback. SMU was one of the schools willing to bet on him. Their coaches actually liked the fact that he was built differently. One of them basically described Luster as a running back with a cannon for an arm, which is probably the simplest way to understand why people were interested in him. If your quarterback can run like a back, defenses have to account for him differently. Bring an extra defender toward the box to stop him, and suddenly somebody's open somewhere else. The problem was Luster walked into a loaded quarterback room. Preston Stone was there, Kevin Jennings was coming up, and Jennings eventually became the guy. So Luster went from putting up ridiculous numbers in Texas to basically disappearing. Across 2 seasons at SMU, he completed only 3 passes for 23 yards. The coaches still seemed to believe in him. Rhett Lashley talked about how he stood out in practice and praised his calmness, but there is a huge difference between saying a backup looks good and taking the football away from a guy like Kevin Jennings. One of Luster's strangest moments at SMU actually happened in the college football playoff. SMU was getting blown out by Penn State, Jennings was pulled late so he wouldn't take unnecessary hits, and Preston Stone was preparing to transfer, so the staff didn't want to risk him getting hurt either. That meant Luster got into the game. Think about that for a second. One of the most productive high school quarterbacks in Texas finally gets onto the field in the college football playoff because the starter is being protected and the backup is getting ready to leave. After that season, Luster transferred to Texas State. By then, his physical transformation had become even more noticeable. He was listed around 245 pounds, and Texas State looked like a pretty interesting fit. G.J. Kinney likes athletic quarterbacks and aggressive offense, so maybe this was finally going to be the place where Luster got his chance. But once again, he entered another quarterback competition. Brad Jackson already knew the system. Former Auburn 4-star Holden Geriner was also in the room, and Jackson eventually won the job. Luster appeared in only 2 games, completed 1 pass for 14 yards, and then went back into the portal. So after 3 college seasons, Keldric Luster had one of the craziest stat lines you'll ever see. He had 37 career passing yards. 37! This is the same guy who threw for more than 7,000 yards in high school, the same guy who produced more than 5,000 total yards in 1 season, the same guy who had 667 yards in 1 game. 3 years into college football, he had 37 passing yards. Then, Ball State came along, and this might be exactly the situation he needed. Ball State went 4-8 last season and averaged just 15.8 points per game. They didn't need to protect some great offense that was already working. They needed something different. They needed somebody who could change the way a defense prepared for them, and Luster definitely gives you that. He still had to win the job, though. Ball State also brought in Tyler Mizell, a Division II transfer who had thrown for nearly 2,900 yards and 26 touchdowns the previous season. Just look at the difference. Mizell had almost 2,900 passing yards in 1 season. Luster had 37 in his entire college career. If you were choosing the starter by looking at their stat sheets, this wouldn't have looked close. And Luster won. Ball State isn't starting him because of hype or because 250 pounds looks funny on a roster. They had another quarterback coming off a huge season, watched both of them throughout the offseason, and still chose Luster. There's clearly something the coaching staff sees in him that hasn't shown up in a college box score yet. And now he's officially 250 pounds. That's where things become really interesting. If Ball State wants to use read option, quarterback power, or designed runs, defenders aren't chasing some 190-pound quarterback who's looking for the sideline. They're dealing with a 250-pound runner who has been carrying the football his entire life. Luster ran for almost 2,900 yards in high school. Running isn't some new part of his game because he got bigger. It's always been there. Can he actually throw consistently against FBS defenses? Nobody knows. Luster has only attempted 12 passes in 3 college seasons. Looking good in high school and practice is one thing. Standing in the pocket on 3rd and 8 against a defense disguising coverage and sending pressure is something completely different. Ball State is betting that the quarterback who once destroyed defenses in Texas is still in there. And his first chance to show it could not be more difficult. Luster's first career college start is scheduled to come against #1 Ohio State in Columbus. No easy opener, no small stadium where he can settle in. You're taking a quarterback with 37 career passing yards and putting him in the horseshoe in front of more than 100,000 people against one of the most talented teams in college football. Once Ball State announced Luster as the starter, the internet immediately did what you would expect. People started comparing him to Jared Lorenzen. Fans called him BBQ, short for Big Beautiful Quarterback. People called him a bowling ball. His pictures started getting passed around everywhere because he simply doesn't look like the quarterback people are used to seeing.